All right, Zig coming in on the top 10 of the show. We have Cailyn Maeve, singer, songwriter, guitarist of the band Final Passion. She originally started her musical journey in Houston, Texas, fronting the punk band Fail Mary, but has since moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and has started her most recent project, Final Passion. Final Passion is Cailyn's solo project. She sings, plays all the instruments, and produces everything on her own. And she has recently put out a new EP called We Will Figure It Out. We're going to listen to a tune. This is I'm All... Final Passion, the band. The song, I'm All Right, and the EP is titled We Will Figure It Out, available on all streaming platforms. Now, Cailyn, I met Cailyn through the Frans. I remember she came to a Frans show, and then we all went to my friends, and she was telling us how she found the Frans on like a Reddit chain, which was just kind of mind-blowing. And because the internet just seems like a void, so to know that people are reading things and talking about things in a little scene like the Cleveland scene is a pretty cool. Anyway, so Cailyn became a friend, and we've seen Cailyn at every one of the Fran shows, and she has been a super supporter. If you listen to the last a couple episodes ago, we talked to the Frans for their goodbye send off, and Cailyn made a guest appearance in that episode, which was fun. That was a fun chat. Anywho, we're gonna get to this conversation. If you hear anything you like, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Cailyn and sharing their insight with you. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Cailyn.
Heck yeah.
So, okay, the kind of started off, we got to kind of, we've talked about before when we met, but like trace your journey. Now, you grew up in Ohio, right?
No, so it's a little bit complicated.
Okay, let's go on it.
not too complicated, but a little bit. So I was born in East Tennessee, right? Okay. And then when I was like 5, I moved to Kentucky. And then about 5 years later, my parents divorced. I moved with my mom to her home state of Texas. And then my dad stayed in Kentucky, got a job offer in Cleveland, moved here. And then, let's see. So I was kind of living between the two places, right? So like during the school year, I would be in Texas, and during like summer and like Christmas break, I would be up here. So I was kind of living between the two places, you know?
Yeah. So was that Houston, right?
So I lived in like rural, small town Texas,
okay.
Middle of nowhere for many years. And then after I got out of community college, I moved to Houston to start a band.
All right, cool.
Yeah. So I was in Houston. Yeah. So I was in Houston for 7 years, and then I ended up here. And the story behind that is mostly just like, I realized that I was trans, and then was in the closet for several years. And then when I came out to my dad and stepmom who live up here, they were like, "Are you sure you want to like still be in the South in Texas?" Because there was a lot of like, not to make it like all political or whatever, but that was the politics of the situation down there. There was a lot of like anti-trans legislation coming around, but yeah, they asked me if they wanted to help move me up here, and I was like, "Nah, I think it's good." And then like there was an executive order from the governor of Texas at the time, or maybe I don't remember, maybe it was the attorney general, who knows. But it was like it was an order to investigate the parents of trans children for like child abuse.
Oh my God.
And I was like, yeah. So I was like, okay, that's a major red flag. Let's move to the great state of Ohio, where everything is great for trans people, right?
So wait, how soon after were you like, oh, I think it's good, did that happen? Where you're like, well, maybe not?
It was like maybe a month.
Okay, wow.
So it was a pretty quick turnaround.
So at least it was in the like thinking time for, even if you were like, yeah, let's do it. You know what I mean? That would kind of been in that planning process.
For sure.
Shit.
Yeah. So like 6 months later, I was up here. And part of it too was just like I kind of needed a reset, you know.
Yeah.
It was nice to move to a place where I was relatively unknown, you know,
Yeah.
because like even though I would spend summers and stuff up here, I was uh you know I didn't socialize really when I was here, so
Well, it's hard like when you're like aside from family, you know what I mean? Like when you're coming from the social, how do you socialize with like, there's no like, when school's out, it's kind of high, it's kind of hard to find like where kids hang out unless you go to school with those kids and know where they hang out. You know what I mean? Like
right.
just to find the group or the park where everyone's kicking it. It's not, especially in Ohio, there's not too many places, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? There's like, I've hoping I have found out it's Sheets, like in Ridgeville,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but that only has recently just existed. But like,
Right.
like at that age when you're basically when your parents are driving you around, there's nowhere to really find out
Hmm.
where people hang out. And like, where was your dad living? Was he like in Lakewood at that point or
Yeah,
around
yeah.
there?
It
Okay,
was
okay.
Lakewood. So it was like, you know, there were
I
places
guess
to
there's
go. It was
yeah,
just like I was also a child and like I was up
yeah.
there to visit my parents. So it was more like, you know, we would be here at the house or we would go out and all do something together and you know, it was kind of like that. And I kind of stopped coming up here in my teen years and into earlier adulthood or whatever, you know.
Got it.
Um
Damn. That's a okay. Because I remember when we first met, like kind of hearing some of the story, but like that's all pretty fast paced for like okay Ohio time. Like,
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a turbulent time in my life, you know.
yeah.
So
So I guess let's
um
kind of like take a couple steps back and like when did
yeah.
music like become like something just an outlet for you? Like when did music start to like stick out even before like maybe it was a mode of expression, but like when did like songs start to matter?
Um so I was a band kid, right?
Okay,
Um
what was the
so
instrument?
I played trumpet and I
Okay.
was terrible.
It's hard.
um I played trumpet up until I was in uh let's see, until I was a junior in high school and then my band director was like, "Nope, we're switching you to baritone." Uh and I did a lot better at that. I was pretty good. But let's see, probably like around the time I was in high school was when I was starting to like, maybe even a little bit before that, maybe like seventh, eighth grade, something like that. Um, that's when I started really like paying attention to music. Uh, and I think the way I got into it is a little bit unique because
Yeah.
I wasn't what got me into it was like smaller independent artists on the internet, basically. So these were guys who were like, you know, this was like back in 2007, 2008, when this was still kind of new. But I was listening to guys like Jonathan Colton and Brad Sucks and all these guys who were like putting their music out onto the internet for free for people to just download. Um, and they made a living doing it somehow. And that sort of inspired me to sort of get into it.
Was it
Um,
MySpace days? I'm trying to like before,
yeah,
yeah? Okay.
the tail end, the closing days of the MySpace era, I want to say.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that's sort of what got me interested because these were just like normal people who were uh, putting music onto the internet for others to hear.
Well, how'd you even
Um,
come across them? Because I feel like that's like an avenue that like if you kind of play music already, it sticks out. Did someone like
yeah,
recommend? Was it
um, I think it was just the nature of it being freely available and shared around. I couldn't tell you like where I first heard of some of these guys. I know Jonathan Colton was the first. Uh, it might have been through like a fan like music video or something that somebody made and put onto YouTube. Uh, but I don't remember the exact origin if I'm honest.
okay? Well, so that is an interesting like kind of start into it is kind of seeing the accessibility, as opposed to kind of the distance. Because I feel a lot of people when they get bought into music, you're buying a lot of people buy into like the kind of distant act, like Taylor Swift or the you know what I
Yeah.
mean, like the kind of big like phenomena, like because that's what kids, you know, and younger people are like exposed to just everywhere, like on a Coca-Cola can or whatever. It's like
Hmm.
inescapable, and then like at that age you're trying to figure out who you are and some of what these people are saying and what the how this music sounds to you and resonates is way different than what, you know, like in elementary school where it's just like something you like convert, like just
Right.
energetically dash around the room to, like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you kind of gotta understand that, like, I was a weird kid. I didn't have like a ton of friends, so it was basically just like I was sort of left to my own devices. I had a computer and an internet connection, and that was it.
okay, so, and that makes sense, kind of like having, like how you said, in the middle of nowhere, like nothing to do. Um,
Right? Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
So, but like, but that I think that's really cool to like to have like the first like kind of thing really speak to you, be something that seems accessible. You know what I mean? It's like I think back and
Right.
like when I first started getting into music, it was like guitar heavy stuff, like Jimi Hendrix. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Just stuff like
Hmm.
stuff that was so distant. AC/DC. You know what I mean? Like was the closest like thing you can get to rationalizing it is a record in your grandma's basement. You know, like
Yeah.
a waterlogged record from your aunt. Like, um,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, which is so there's so much already layers put away from anything making that remotely possible. But that's really cool. That's so like, after kind of like getting that in your ears, like when did like do you jump from was saxophone or not saxophone? It was
It's
baritone.
trumpet. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So yeah, yeah. So that there's an important part of the story I completely left out. So, so at the same time as this happening, there was also a little known game floating around called Guitar Hero, um, and I got into that. I was playing that all the time, and my mom one day was like, "You know what? I'm gonna get this kid a guitar." So she came home one night with like it was like a $60 acoustic guitar from like Walmart or something. And that was my first guitar. And I remember the first time I tried playing it, because you have to tune
Yeah.
it first. I was tuning it, and I was turning the wrong peg
Yeah.
for the string I was trying to tune, and
Oh
the
no.
string snapped, and I cried. Because I was like, "Oh no, I broke it!" Because I didn't know how a guitar worked.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I broke it. I'm never going to be good at this. Self defeating. And then obviously I learned how to change the string. And
But at first, it's like, well, one, it happens and it's abrupt, so it's already kind of like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like it's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's a it's a jump scare, and like, and I've done
um,
that too when you're like trying to crank that like the B
yeah.
string or something, but you're cranking the high E, and you're like, why is it not going? You're looking at the
Oh,
tuner.
oh yeah. All these years later, I'm still doing that. I did not learn. All I've learned is how to change a string quickly when I do inevitably snap one. Um, uh, but yeah, bringing those two things together, I had the guitar, I was learning it, and then I also had these weird independent artists with small like cult communities around them, um, that I was really into, and like these communities were writing out tabs and chords and stuff for these songs. So I was kind of learning these songs as I went, and learning them poorly. But yeah, that's sort of what got me into it altogether. And one of them, I think it was Brad Sucks, a had like the stem tracks available from like all of his mixes, and like I was able to sort of play around with multi-tracking and like I didn't know what a DAW was, but I was messing around in Audacity with all
Oh,
that stuff. And
Audacity, yeah.
um, so I was kind of learning a little bit how to put music together. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah. So it was mostly thanks to the internet and my mom buying me a guitar.
But you know, I think that's really like to see that you're picking up on this even from the game. You know what I mean? From the Guitar Hero
Right?
game,
Yeah.
because like I my brother left a guitar around, and that's how I started playing. Was like, well, I'm gonna try to figure this out, and like, but the Guitar Hero game was around our house too, and I couldn't after like learning guitar, I couldn't like. I couldn't play that game. Like I tried, like rhythmically, Guitar
Yeah.
Hero is really like I think on point. Especially when they did the one with the drum set, the Rock Band one. like
Oh yeah, yeah.
like
Yeah.
I feel like that was really kind of on point. But like as far as like jumping from one to the other, it's way different. You know what I mean? Like the
It is.
dexterity
Yeah.
isn't there, but
Yeah.
like way to get like a new generation of like young kids into like Kansas and like whatever
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Danzig. I'm trying to remember what was on that first Guitar Hero. like
Yeah. So the first one I played was World Tour. That was the one with the
okay.
drums, right? And so the little bits of popular music that I did know uh, were primarily because of that game.
Yeah.
um, so yeah,
It's crazy. It's crazy. That was like a real big craze for a minute. Like
it was. Yeah,
but
you could never recreate that. I don't think.
yeah, I don't think so. Maybe like when VR makes something equivalent, like like the concert
Well, I mean,
hero or
yeah.
something. like
Well, I mean, there's like Beat Saber, which
right, which
is
is pretty
kind of a
cool.
similar concept, but
Yeah.
like I think the barrier to entry being, the high cost of a VR headset, I
Yeah.
think that prevents it from becoming as ubiquitous and as much of like part of the cultural zeitgeist at the time. I think that sort of prevents it a little bit.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
like Guitar Hero, like you had the controllers, but those controllers were like just cheap plastic and they were pretty easy to get a hold of.
Right. And like I think what a normal game would go for like $60 so like Guitar Hero probably was like $100,
Yeah, yeah.
which is kind of crazy to think like the well anyway, like the world of gaming is so different now. Like I really feel like I don't know
Yeah.
anything about gaming.
I feel
Like
like it's left me behind a lot. Yeah. There's like every now and then a big title will come out that I really enjoy, and then like I'm gone for another few years.
like even just the idea of a Steam Deck where you can have all these games that are applicable to like all these different systems. I'm still like, what?
Right.
You don't need to buy yourself like a DVD case of a game. like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
what do you do with all the cassettes or the cartridges?
Right. Yeah.
But like, it's really interesting at that time too, because like the internet really I think made like guitar way more accessible via YouTube and like
Oh, for
when you
sure.
were finding like these tabs because I remember when like I started playing and there was only a handful of tab sites that I was like able to really come across and the ones everyone uses but like to find something so specific for some of these like
Mhm.
smaller artists were they sharing it or was it like an early like Reddit type of thing?
Uh, so I remember some of them were like on that musicians forums, like on their website, they had like a forum
Okay,
section for
okay.
their community.
Yeah.
And a lot of the like community would figure it out.
Okay, that's sick.
Some of them would like end up on like Ultimate Guitar or whatever.
Yeah, or night
Or
tabs 911 or
yeah, yeah, what have you. So yeah, it was mostly just like community members doing it. And it's like I kind of knew what to look for already. So
well, because I was always like, as far as internet, I wasn't that savvy with like I was a late comer to all the social
mm,
medias and stuff. I was kind of so
right.
captured with like trying to figure it out. Like I bought a book, and in here is tablature to play Jimi Hendrix. You know what I mean? It's like really like, or I got a DVD of Chris Thiele, like
Right.
trying to figure out all this stuff like in all these like pretty like well I guess now would be old school ways but
Mhm.
like it just even like at that point to figure it from straight from the source was like uh and like I guess I found like internet forums and stuff like that later when I got into this group State Radio and they really had their stuff on their site and like was all fan tabbed out but I think that like excels like someone musically so like quickly in comparison to like people that like I imagine like when you talk to anyone who's like when you walk around with a guitar, some old dude's gonna be like, "Yeah, I learned Eruption by the record." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I think about how hard that would have actually been to like figure stuff out like that. I'm like, man,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
especially when you didn't
Like
know
I've
anything.
tried with some stuff and it's difficult.
Like it's only now like I'm able to kind of pick up on patterns from learning them from a million visual sources, you know. But
Yeah.
like, and I think we see it too with like younger kids like that are real into music. They like can do things that like it's nothing, like which is cool. And like I think that's
Mhm.
gonna be like the power of like the interweb. It's gonna excel that type of stuff way quicker, even than before. But like at that point, so you're figuring out these tunes. Are you starting to like kind of like make it a mode of expression to yourself? Like, are you really feeling like I want to do this, or is it just kind of a hobby for a while?
Um, so it was just kind of a hobby. Obviously, you're young and you have big dreams or whatever. But it wasn't something that I took like super seriously for a long time. Um, when I was in high school, I had a band. We never played a show ever.
Yeah.
I think there was one rehearsal where everybody showed up. And then every subsequent rehearsal, one fewer person would show up until it
Yeah.
was just me and the drummer. um,
And what was the
so
name of
that
that
failed.
band? What was the name of the band?
I couldn't tell you. I do not remember. uh, but me and that drummer ended up making another band later on. We ended up going to the same community college, right?
Okay, and
And
so at that, before jumping to that, like at that point,
yeah, yeah,
high
yeah.
school's over. Like, do you have a direction? Like, because I know I didn't really. Like, I wanted to do music full time somehow, some way. At that point, because at that
No,
point, I was playing in like a couple bands, and like I knew I wanted to do music. I just didn't know how it was possible, and I was trying to figure out how to sing and play and do bar gigs and do original stuff, like all of it kind of at once. So I was kind of in the stew of like, how does this become one's reality? Um, and because I went to Tri C out here, like to study music and music therapy, and like that's what I ended up
mhm.
getting into. But like just trying it at the point. So when you were at so you just said no, you didn't really have like a sense of that.
So as far as music goes, not really.
Or I
Towards the end of
mean,
high school, like I
yeah,
was, yeah, I was making demos like in my bedroom, which is something I'm still doing. Uh, I was like, yeah, putting together dumb little demos and not sharing them with anybody. Uh, and I was just like, yeah, this is just kind of something I do for fun. But like also towards the end of high school, sort of gotta, you know, take into account I was very depressed at the time, um, being a young trans person who hadn't come to that realization yet. Yeah, yeah. Well, that is just to say, I was just kind of floating through life without much of a vision of the future
gotcha.
at all, let alone
Yeah.
with music. Um, so yeah, I didn't really have much of a direction with the music thing. I was like, for college, I was sort of interested in maybe going for a music technology degree, but there was nowhere that I could realistically go that offered that sort of program.
So that would have been like
But
kind of
yeah,
recording art stuff, because that's kind of like what you're kind of workshopping a little bit in the bedroom.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. Hmm.
Like,
That's always sort of the side of things I've been more interested in anyway.
yeah. I mean, well, with
Mm.
this EP that you put out, like, really getting to hear like how you like. I mean, it was way more electronic than I thought, but that's only because like
Yeah.
I've heard you play these songs live
Hmm.
acoustics so much, and I really like how you built them up. Like I think they're like
Well,
this is
thank you.
sick with like how you like how like it's not even how you arranged the parts and produced it, like, but I'll put a pin in that. Like I think
Sure. Yeah.
this new EP is fucking sick. But like, so at that time, like, did you like you're feeling depressed? Was it kind of a? Did you know there was like an identity thing like you weren't sure of, or it just did nothing make sense?
It it was, yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to describe. I didn't really have the language to describe what I was feeling, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I was living in, small town, rural Texas, right? Um, and it wasn't really something that was talked about at all.
right.
The like sex education or whatever was just like, don't have sex or you'll die. Wait till you're married.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding.
I believe you.
Um, so it was so like LGBT stuff, like
Yeah.
they weren't touching that with a 10-foot pole. There was maybe one out gay kid I can think of in my hometown, and it was not received well. So it just wasn't something that was yeah. Oh, and then like as far as media representation went, being trans was always something that was like either the butt of a joke or something to be horrified by.
Yeah.
And they never used the word transgender, right? It was always some kind of horrible terminology.
Right. Right.
Uh,
So,
so yeah, directionless identity crisis.
yeah.
Didn't really know what was going on. Uh, I wouldn't have even gone to community college if my girlfriend at the time hadn't made me apply. um, and I eventually went for history because
Yeah.
history's cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did she go too, or did she go somewhere else?
yeah, we went to the same community college.
Okay. 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 Like, I mean,
Um,
they gotta like love the people that are looking out for everybody, because like, you know what
yeah,
I mean? Like, it's important to have the friend, partner, someone trying to rattle the cage and make you do better for you, even when you don't think
yeah.
it's gonna be that way. So, okay,
Oh
so
yeah, I've relied on that for most of my life. I'm only just now getting it together.
um, so when you go to community college, and like I remember my
Mm.
experience with community college was pretty good, like as far as like I'm meeting people right away, and I was kind of already going down a discipline like rabbit hole and trying to like develop a routine. So having to do classes and like handle that type of stuff kind of came easy. And like I guess having a more kind of like vague but direction made that whole like thing kind of like more fun than maybe if there wasn't a direction. So was it like a similar experience for you in that sense, like, or was it because of this like kind of not sure what you're doing? Was it more of like a like kind of a weighted shit? What am I doing?
Yeah, there was a lot of shit. What am I doing? uh, so I didn't even declare. Well, no, hold on. So I said I went for history. I
Right.
originally was going for physics. I took one chemistry course because it was a prerequisite.
Yeah, that's a hard
Uh,
course.
and I
Chemistry is
was like,
hard.
nah, this ain't for me. Uh, I did also take a trigonometry course, and I was like, I dropped that class. I didn't even
That's hard
finish it.
too.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, this isn't for me. I need something in the liberal arts. And I had a history professor that I really liked, so I'm going for history. But like, that wasn't until a couple of years in, or a couple semesters in, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
Uh, my saving grace really was when the very next year, that drummer from the band that I was in high school started going to that same community college. And after a while, he asked, "Hey, do you want to start a band?" And I'm like, and he was like, "I got someone who can play bass for us." And I'm like, "Cool, yeah, I'll do it. Why not?" Because I was willing to try anything to just sort of like have get some sort of direction in life, I guess.
Yeah.
And we started the band. It was called Fail Mary. Um, and we played at, so the community college had open mic night. And we played at that mic night several times. And we recorded demos. And then eventually we released an EP. Uh, and then we were both graduating community college. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing after this. And Chris, that's the name of my drummer, Chris was like, hey, do you want to move to Houston? uh, and so we were roommates and in this band, and you know, trying to make it work. And we started like getting some momentum for a while there, and then COVID hit.
Mm, okay. The killer of
Uh,
all momentum until
yeah, it was sad because we had a show scheduled for, I think it was March 13th or March 14th, something like that, of 2020,
yeah.
the week of all the lockdowns. So it was like, yeah, we're gonna play this show, and then things started happening. We're like, ooh, we're not sure if the show's happening.
Yep.
And it was right up until like the day before, and it was like, yeah, show's canceled. And we never played another show again.
Yeah. Oh shit. Well, I was gonna say, what was it like? What was it like a big show? Was it something you guys were like, this is, you know what I mean?
It wasn't like a high stakes show or
Okay,
anything,
okay,
but it
okay.
was like
Something that was
it was a
planned.
venue that we really liked playing.
Yeah.
We were playing with some bands that we thought were really cool. So it was kind of a bummer that it had shut down, uh, or that it had been canceled. But we were like, this will be over in a couple months for sure. And then the rest of the story, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so during that time, we tried to make an album, and uh, it never saw the light of day, unfortunately. Um,
I gotta imagine
uh,
like trying to record in tight spaces at that point too. Like they had to kind of be. It's a different
yeah,
experience, you know what I mean, when you have room and people that are willing to come in and help out. But when you're trying to do it all on your own and like in an apartment or like in a
mhm,
closet, you know what I mean. It just doesn't
right, yeah,
like yeah, that was a rough time for everybody, everything, and like so okay,
yeah.
so through the pandemic, like how
Mhm.
does the band just fizzle out? Is that when you move here, or like the drummer move?
So
Like,
so what happened was I kind of glossed over a lot there, right?
well, yeah, there's a lot
Uh,
that it's yeah.
yeah. So about late 2018, early 2019, uh, I realized I'm trans.
So
uh,
okay, so
and
at that point, did you find like the terminology? Did you meet other people that
yeah,
kind of yeah? It was just like
so I was out living on my own. Well, not really on my own. I was living
yeah,
with uh
Chris.
but yeah, Chris, my girlfriend at the time, and then also Chris's girlfriend. Um, but the point was I was living uh away from my parents, who were great, by the way. It's not like they were like
Yeah.
keeping stuff from me or anything. Um, but I was out in the world on my own for the first time, and I'm on the internet a lot.
Well, because
So,
everything's
and
shut down and there's nothing.
yeah, well, not at this
Oh,
point, not
okay. This
yet.
is
This
2019,
is 2017,
17. Okay, okay,
2018,
okay, okay.
2019. Yeah. But yeah, I start learning about uh being trans and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And several months go by, and then the realization hits, as I'm, I guess, like scrolling through Reddit or something one day. Uh, and it's an earth-shattering realization. I tell, mm, my roommates, after my girlfriend at the time broke up with me and moved out. I tell my roommates, and they're like, "Oh, uh, okay." Like they're supportive and
Yeah, yeah,
everything, but
yeah.
it's like it's an awkward situation. Uh, and they were the only people I was out to for several years. And it wasn't until during the pandemic that I started like experimenting with stuff. Um, wearing different clothes, painting nails,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah, yeah.
The stuff everybody does, or at least every trans person does, I guess I should say. And I don't know, that was a weird time in my life. Eventually, I think it was like May of 2020. Uh, at this point, it's just me, my drummer, and his fiance. At this point, I think they want to get their own apartment together, and I'm like, okay, I got to move out. And I move in with this other person, uh, who I had been sort of in a pseudo relationship with, I guess. I don't know. Um, and things with that situation get really complicated. It becomes the worst relationship ever. The worst
Ugh.
8 months of my life, and
Yeah.
I'm still in the closet. And uh, uh, yeah, it's gonna skip over most of that stuff. Things come
That's all
to a
that has to
head.
be
It
said
gets
on that. Yeah.
explosive.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I move out. I
And this
end
is
up
still in Houston,
back
right?
at my. This is still in Houston.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But I get kicked out, uh, and I move back in with my parents out in the middle of nowhere, which is painful, because I hate being in the middle of nowhere,
Well, yeah,
uh,
after being
and
around
also
stuff.
still closeted.
Yeah.
Um, and then Chris, once again, saves my life. Uh, uh, asked me if I want to move out and if I need a roommate and all this stuff, and I moved back in with them. Uh, and that is when the rest of that stuff happens, where I come out to my parents, move up here, etc. Um, and one of the other uh, reasons that I decided to move up here was my bass player in the band, who I don't think has gotten a mention yet in this story.
Yeah.
uh, he decides, for one reason or another, I don't know if it was a job or what, I don't know, but he moves to Indianapolis. And I'm like, okay, well, one of us is already moving away to the Midwest, so I guess I might as well too. At that point, it was like we had been working on this album, and the mindset was like it has to be absolutely perfect in every way, which is the killer of projects, as I've come to find.
I'm hearing that, and
Yeah.
yes.
And yeah, so this thing was never getting done.
How much would you say is done in the ether? Like a tune or two, like a third of it, like.
Oh, we had demos for all of the songs done,
okay.
And we had started recording like the actual final tracks for everything, and that's when our bass player moved, and then I moved.
Everyone just so like even with that band, like as far as like how songs were being produced within the group, was it kind of you writing songs, bringing it to the group? Was it the group writing together? What did that look like?
So I would write the songs. I would write the lyrics, and then the guitar parts, basically. Like I'd write the lyrics and the chords, and I'd bring it to the other two guys, and our bass player would write a bass part, and our drummer would write a drum part. And my drummer was really good at like editing my ideas down to a shorter song, because I was always really bad about writing really long, like 5-6 minute songs. And he would be like, we can cut this part, we can cut this part, we can cut this part. And for the most part, I'd be like, yeah, I agree. So he was really good at editing my stuff. So we had a pretty good like creative dynamic.
Yeah, no, that is like, because
it was just like we were both like perfectionists, and it had to be perfect before anybody could lay years on it.
No, for sure. I totally relate to that. Like, unbelievably relate to the perfectionist bit. Like, but that is a really, because that's cool, because everyone gets like an input to it. It's not just like, here's a song, do your bit, but also like,
right. Yeah.
And I think drummers have a keen eye for like kind of the conducting of the song, in a sense of like, because like that's another thing with our drummer Pat. He's always like, yeah, all right, you can cut that. You can cut that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll make it shorter. Let's do 2 in the next part. You know what I mean? Like, And
I suspect part of it comes from having to play it for that long.
yeah. Maybe
Because it's a
that's it.
demanding drum. Yeah, I mean that thought just occurred to me. Uh,
we,
I
I
know
was
how tiring playing drums can be, so I sympathize with that.
I was writing them as like heroes of music and Beethovens of the kit, and here they are, just like, oh, I don't want to play that long.
I mean, I think they could do it. I believe.
Right. I believe in them. I believe in the
I
drummers.
think they could. I think they got it in them.
But okay, so the perfectionism's kind of taking over. The world's kind of
Yeah.
melting, like, and then
Right.
you move out to the Midwest, and like, and
Hmm.
not too long after we meet through the Frans at
Hmm.
my friends. So like,
Yeah.
so how did you like find like? Because I still that story's crazy. You found them through a Reddit post or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So more or less, yeah, that's the story. No. So I had been up here for about 6 months. I was, as always, recording demos in my bedroom, and then never releasing them. Right. Uh, so I don't know. I wanted to get involved in the Cleveland like music scene, but I wasn't like taking any active approach to it. I was just basically like, oh hey, I'm looking at the Cleveland music subreddit or whatever, uh, and I see a post in there one day. I don't remember if it was like the Cleveland or the Cleveland music one, but I see a post in there one day from it was like Northeast Ohio urbanism or something, and they were promoting the Franz show at the Ohio Inn, and this was January. Geez, I remember it was January 6th because there were many jokes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
But also, I think it was what 21 or 22.
no, it couldn't have been that early.
Do you think?
It must have been 20. It must have been 23.
I guess so. Yeah.
It must have been
Well,
because I wasn't up here till June of 22. So,
okay. Well,
but yeah,
maybe it was 22. No, that doesn't make sense.
no, it had to be January 6th,
23.
2023.
Yeah.
Um,
But anyway.
has to be.
Yeah.
So I see this post on Reddit. This is several weeks before, and I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. I'll check them out. So I find their Bandcamp, and they have some like demos up. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I was not impressed.
You mean Dracula didn't
like,
cut it?
oh well, Dracula wasn't around yet. I don't think. I don't really remember.
I can't
And
remember what
they
was
took
up
all
there.
that stuff down,
Regardless,
understandably.
yeah.
So, um, and like there were some covers of stuff in there, songs that I liked, but it was like they were demos.
Yeah.
So it's like, maybe I'll go to that. Who knows? And I find their Instagram page and I follow them just to be like, okay, I'll keep an eye on these guys, see what happens. Um, and then they post on the Instagram that it's their drummer's last show, and that they're releasing a single that day. And I was like, okay, maybe. And I go to listen to the single, and I'm like, if this single is good, I'll go to the show. And it ended up being good. So, um, so I was like, okay, I'll go to this. I probably won't regret going. So after work that day, I bike over to the Ohio and I go. I have a great time. Uh, I chat with a couple of people. I go home. And then I think it was a few weeks later. Or no, it must have been. Let's see. I think this was in March. They were, I think, hosting an open mic
Yeah,
at
it's
this
Ohio Inn.
place
Yeah.
near. Well, it wasn't at the Ohio Inn. It was at a yoga studio on the east side. I think it was like near Shaker Square.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, okay, these are people I met previously. I haven't performed since 2019. So I was like, okay, I'll go. So I get my acoustic guitar. I navigate the public transit system here, and I eventually make it to the open mic. And that's really when I met all of you guys for the first time.
Right. I forgot
Um,
that that was your first gig back because that was at Gabe's
yeah.
mom's yoga studio that she
Oh,
was
was that
working.
Gabe's mom?
It
Okay,
wasn't
yeah.
her. It wasn't her place, but she teaches there or does something there, and like
Okay, all right.
because
I was wondering all these years later, well, all this year later, I guess.
yeah,
Uh,
all this
why
time.
that yoga studio? I was wondering why it was there. Okay,
Right.
it was a
Right.
cool vibe, you know.
Yeah. No, it was a super cool vibe because like it wasn't too many people. It was like me, Gabe, Cameron, you. There was that other girl who I think that played too, and there was poetry in between, and like
Yeah,
was it
yeah.
like super shitty weather-wise outside? I remember it like
It was cold.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I remember it for some reason being not like a like if it was a storm or something, but yeah, but no, oh my god, I forgot all about that night. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, you sounded really good that night, and like, and it was just funny because like I think I met you at the show before, the Steven's last show, and
Yeah.
then like
Likely, yeah.
yeah, and like and then just like at every Fran show, Cailyn was there, and like
I mean, it was a they were billing themselves as a public transit rock band or a public transit punk band, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's right up my alley, and I just kept going because it was fun.
that's all. So okay, so kind of like with your journey alongside like hanging out in the scene and like meeting all the
Mm.
people, like you're writing songs. Are any of these songs that like are on these two EPs that you kind of put? I think it's two, right? There's this one that you just
There's
put
a
out.
single with a really long B side,
Right, right,
and
right.
then an EP, which is almost the same length as that single.
So like with these two releases, like
Yeah.
were any of these recycled from the band? Are these all new things that came from your time in Ohio?
So no, they're not recycled. It was so that first single, Perpetual Motion, uh, was about the aforementioned shitty relationship. And that was written like just before I moved up here. I think I was going to pitch it as a Fail Mary song originally for my previous band. And I moved before like I was kind of done writing it. Uh, so that one was kind of on the brain when I moved up here. So I had kind of a lot of time to work on it. The B side was written in the midst of that terrible relationship. And it was originally going to be kind of more like a dancey, like electronic type song, but eventually I changed gears and made it a slow acoustic thing. Um, so those, yeah, so all of it is post that band, and everything on this EP was stuff that was written after I moved here. Uh, Sort of about, just various experiences I've had.
Well,
uh,
that's awesome because like so I guess as far as like moving from writing like songs to pitch to a band, right? Where like
mhm.
you're not necessarily composing kind of like the drum aspect of it or necessarily but you can hear it when you write it, right? When you're writing these songs, you
Sure,
kind
yeah.
of you get a vague idea of what the drums are going to do. Um but with these two releases, it's kind you do everything on it. And like so
Mhm.
I guess like were did that come easy the kind of or was that more of the writing challenge or something that brought more life to writing for you? There's three options there I realized in this one question. Like to like kind of learn how to compose through line with drums and bass and write the whole and even like with the harmonies and the like kind of like
Mhm.
the ad lib lyrics that are in the background and I love those like but like like they're really good like they are really good I love it but like
Oh, thank you.
but to kind of produce it like that did you find that came to you fairly easy or was that more of a I guess a challenge.
It was a bit of a challenge. I do credit a lot of the I do credit my ability to do that to working with other musicians previously. Like I wouldn't know how to approach writing a drum part if I hadn't been working with a drummer for several years, right? Uh, and a lot of it too is I would approach these songs and I kind of try to think like like my drummer, you know.
Yeah.
I would try to, I would try to approach it like, what would he change with this, you know? But yeah, writing drum parts is not easy. It's not something that comes super naturally to me, you know. And sometimes I fall back on using just like a drum loop that I've purchased somewhere
Yeah.
that I then modify, or I'll listen to a song that has kind of the vibe that I want to go for, and I'll sort of like steal that drum part and sort of switch it around a little bit. um, but for I don't know, I think for Perpetual Motion, it was like for that first single, it was I kind of already had an idea of what I wanted the drum part to be. Uh, and just sort of like as I went along, I would pepper in new stuff, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, because like that
And when yeah,
I was gonna say, as someone who writes songs, like I feel super lucky that I can just bring it to Cody and Pat and just be like, all right, like I guess being a guitar player, I kind of got an idea for what a bass might do, but when it comes to drums, I'm always like,
mm-hmm.
there's the vague sense of the fill in the type of pattern you would hear here, right? You know what I mean? But
Right,
like
yeah,
the execution of it, it's a whole different thing, and like it's such a different way to look at a song as far as like throwing tempos and switching like the one, like what, what I mean, how that can affect the whole feel of the tune. Like it's such a different type of space for writing songs. And like what really hit me with I'm All Right, like how that song came together.
mm-hmm.
Like that's sick. Like this is some like rad Joy Division-esque like heavy
Yeah.
shit. You know what I mean? Like, but I can tell
Well,
you put
awesome.
a
That's
lot
what I was
of
going for. Nice.
what that. Well, I could tell you put a lot of thought into it, and like, so I guess like, and coming from a place of already like being in a perfection type of mind state,
Mm-hmm.
was it and to learn a whole new like view of the instruments or the view of songcraft, was it easier in this sense to kind of accept like the or offload the burden of perfection because of like trying to take on all these different parts of the song?
Yeah, I've abandoned perfectionism at this point. um, that's the only reason I'm able to finish anything now. With with that first release with Perpetual Motion, I was painstakingly like making sure everything was absolutely perfect with it before I even thought about releasing it. And even after I released it, I kept finding new things to pick at and be like, I could have done that better. I could have done that better. Uh, but once it was out there, I was just like, oh, it actually doesn't matter that much because no one's gonna fucking listen to it anyway. And the ones who do listen to it are, they're not going to be looking for the imperfections.
Right. Well,
Uh,
it's
and that sort of the uh, it kind of like gave rise to the ethos of what I was going for with this EP, which was just like, yeah, fuck it, it doesn't have to be perfect. Uh, I would just like record the part, and if it wasn't totally right, but it was fine enough, I would just leave it. I would maybe punch in here or there if it was like an egregious mistake or whatever. But uh, yeah, I mean, it was just a matter of letting go and being like, people aren't going to notice, I don't think.
and as someone who plays music, I didn't notice if there was any like going through and like, but that
especially
process.
with like, yeah, I mean, well, just as a specific example with New Song, the second track on the EP, I didn't even finish writing it. The chorus doesn't have any legitimate lyrics in it. It's just dot 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 dot.
But there's so many
uh,
choruses from the '90s that are that way.
yeah, and I was like, I'm just gonna leave this one unfinished and polish it up as much as I can and put it out there. So
That's one with all the ad libs I liked. I was like, that's awesome. Just like in the
yeah,
background.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was fun.
But yeah, that's, I mean, the sense of kind of accepting what it is and letting go.
hmm
Like, did playing in the scene around here kind of help encourage that?
Um, Yeah, sort of, because it was just like, I don't know. So when I was involved in the music scene in Houston, right, it was, uh, I didn't really make, like, there were a lot of cool people in that scene, don't get me wrong, but I was kind of just like drifting through life and didn't really make any close friends with anybody in that scene. So I wasn't, I don't know, I guess I was kind of putting people on a pedestal a little bit, and looking at their work as being basically flawless. Or if it had flaws, then it was fine because it was them. But I hold myself
Right.
to a higher standard, and I have to be perfect. But I'm here now, and like I have friends in the scene, and I listen to all of their stuff, and it's like, okay, I can do that too, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, so that makes it easier, like just the level of support that I get, and also just like, it's just art. It's fine if you put something out and people don't like it, you know. Uh, I don't know. I think the sort of personal aspect of it helps a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, that totally makes sense. Because, like, I don't know, like, we all live in this, like, kind of, eventually music becomes like a mode of expression and it becomes kind of an identity of, oh, I have a thing, I do this thing. And then,
Hmm.
like, okay, it has to be good because this is what I am. I'm a person who does this thing, right? Like,
Hmm.
and if I don't do it good, when am I? I'm trash. You know, this builds up on our, in our minds and like, so to like kind of come to the conclusion or come to the realization that you can just do a thing, move on. It can be a time capsule of that moment. You did the best you could at it, and then you did the next one and you did better at it.
Yeah,
Usually when you let go to things like that, they come out better anyway. So it's like that totally
yeah,
makes sense what you're saying. Um,
yeah. And like looking back at my old band stuff too, I re-listened to that old EP not too long ago.
yeah.
Uh, and it's kind of hard for me to listen to now because my voice was so different back then. But as imperfect as it was, I sort of see that EP as kind of like a snapshot of that time period, as a sort of a Polaroid, basically, of looking back at making music with my best friend, and I kind of wish we had done more of that because there's not really anything else to show for the work that we did.
At
Um,
least not yet.
and I mean, yeah, I mean, things might still happen with that project, but for now, I'm kind of focused on like the Cleveland music scene here.
So
Sorry, my alarm was going off. And uh, oh man, what was I going to say? Uh, a lot of it is like, all my friends are making really cool music, and I want to get in on that, and the drive to like make the music and put it out there and have people listen to it outweighs the perfectionist aspect of it. Um, because I do want that snapshot. I want I want something to show for um, I want something to show for the connections I've made here and
right.
the work that I've put in and stuff like that. So, you know,
Well,
I don't know if I answered your question directly in any way, but
Well, no, for sure. And like I think that's, I think it's cool that the scene kind of makes it that accepting that you want to leave your snapshot of being here. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Which kind of brings me to the next question, which is like, what is next? Because I know there's a house show in the works to kind of celebrate the release of this, but by the time I get this out, that house show's probably gonna be over. like,
Right, yeah.
um,
Uh,
but as far as like
October 12th, yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. This will be way out.
The shit show in the shed, I think is what it's called.
Shit, Joe in the shed. Oh shit. But
Uh,
is there more songs in the work? Another EP? Kind of looking forward to, or at least planning.
yeah. So in my bedroom, right next to me, I have a whiteboard of a bunch of potential songs to put out. Um, I'm thinking probably you can expect a single. But I'm also sort of planning out a bit of an EP.
Sick.
And some of this stuff will be kind of uh, like older stuff. At least one of them is older, from pre me moving here days.
Okay.
But Yeah, I don't know. I'm still kind of working it out, you know. I'm thinking it'll probably be singles for a little bit, just because you know it's quicker to produce and release and whatnot.
And it's less to like kind of like it's easier to make sure one thing's kind of the best you can make it as opposed to
Yeah,
nine things. You know what I mean? Like it's so hard to keep
yeah.
track of certain things, you know.
So,
Um,
so yeah, there's that show. I went a little bit out of my comfort zone, and I made a music video for
yeah,
new song. That should be
sick.
out later this week, so it'll be out probably by the time people hear this.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Uh,
YouTube, right? Or is it the gram or
it'll I'll probably throw it in both places. You know?
okay, very cool.
um, yeah, so that's gonna happen. Yeah, as far as new music, I'm working on new demos all the time. So I'm hoping to like release more than one thing a year. So
I
we'll see
feel
how that
that.
goes. I
Oh my
don't.
gosh. I feel that. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, hold on. I've got bad connection. Yeah, it's a struggle. But I don't think any albums or anything are on the horizon for the moment. I think it's just going to be mostly small releases for this project.
Cool. Well, Cailyn, thank you so much for chatting with me, and I'm excited to hear what comes next.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.